Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This resolution is our last attempt to possibly influence the Supreme Court before their decision this summer. This is a pro-life resolution. I'm just going to go through some of the whereases. I'm not going to hit them all, but the resolution itself, it recognizes and affirms that the Supreme Court has a key role in government, and it is not denying the importance that they have a rightful place. But it also notes that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land and not the Supreme Court's opinions. It talks about where judges themselves are bound to an oath to follow the Constitution. Down on line 16, it talks about that the Supreme Court decisions that are not consistent with the Constitution are not binding on the states. Down on line 19, it just recognizes the egregious decision of Roe versus Wade back in 1973. And if we continue on down to line 21, let's go to 23. It's talking about, it says, Idaho courts and prosecutors have long recognized equal protection by enforcing the state's criminal murder and imposing prison sentences on murder of the preborn persons. At this moment, we have people in prison for life sentences for killing unborn babies. And we're just recognizing here that equal protection. Line 26, whereas 31 children are killed every week in Idaho, 1,500 a year in just 3 cities in our state. I'll read line 29. It says, whereas the Idaho legislature has conformed Idaho code to Roe and has patiently endured 49 years of waiting for the federal courts to change its judicial precedent set in Roe and has abided by the federal court's unconstitutional opinions while over 73,000 children have been aborted. And it just goes on. I mean, life is so important, and I guess I don't need to go through every one of these whereases, but I'll talk at the very end. It says, whereas legislators of the House are the only oath-bound to follow, actually I'm going to go to the furthermore. At the very end, it says, be it resolved by the members of the House of Representatives assembled this second regular session of the 66th Idaho Legislature that the Idaho House of Representatives urges the Supreme Court of the United States to reverse its longstanding decision. And this is our last chance to influence the Supreme Court. I don't know that they'll listen to us, but I think it's important that we make ourselves clear on where we stand on this important issue. And I hope I can get your green light on this resolution.
Is there further debate? Lady from 19.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The right to make our own choices about reproductive health care is sacred. It has meant freedom for countless Idahoans and many people in my life. And I've also seen how the lack of access to reproductive health care hurts people. I will be voting against this resolution.
Is there further debate? Gentleman from 30.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, no one could be more opposed to abortion than I. But there are some statements in this resolution, in the whereas, and in the resolutions themselves, which I simply can't support. I wished it said some things differently than it does. I'm going to have to vote no, not because I want abortion, but because the statements about the Supreme Court and the Constitution are to some degree misleading and false, and I can't put my name to that. Thank you.
No further debate. Gentleman from 11.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I agree with the good gentleman from 30 that abortion it's a horrible thing, and I don't support abortion. I can live with some of the wording in this, just like the good gentleman can live with some of the wording. It's the last paragraph that goes too far for me, though. It's when we say that we will no longer abide by the rule of law, basically is what that last sentence says. That last sentence is borderline seditious. And when we no longer abide by the rule of law, then we start to trend towards anarchy. And that is my problem with this. And if you don't like what the rule of law is, we work to change the rule of law. We don't just ignore it. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I can't support this.
Is there further debate? Gentleman from 34.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are two checks on the constitutionality of law. Article 6 of our U.S. Constitution says, the Constitution and laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof shall be the supreme law of the land. Laws made in pursuance thereof. If we think a law is unconstitutional, well, the courts, through Madison versus Marbury, I believe, the Supreme Court has declared its ability for judicial review, and therefore they declare constitutionality or unconstitutionality of laws. That is one check on whether a law is constitutional or not. Another check comes from the 9th and 10th Amendments, which says that the states reserve the powers not delegated to the federal government in the Constitution. We also are a check on constitutionality of laws. And so if a state says a law is unconstitutional, we have the power of nullification to do that. It is a constitutional power. States have done this. The state of Colorado and Washington have taken it upon themselves to declare federal law unconstitutional with regards to something as trivial in comparison as marijuana. I think if we're talking about 1,500 aborted babies every year in Idaho, and we have a question about the constitutionality of that Roe v. Wade ruling, we ought to take it upon ourselves, and that's what this resolution does. It says, Supreme Court, you need to reverse yourself because you got it wrong. And if you don't, the state reserves the powers given to us in the Constitution to be our own review of constitutionality, and we'll take it upon ourselves to nullify a law which is unjust and unconstitutional. It's a great resolution. Doesn't have the effect and force of law yet, but I hope it does when we commit our resolve to protecting unborn babies in Idaho. Thank you.
Is there further debate? I believe that's why we have a rule to not have stuff that goes up above the rail. Gentleman from 32.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I sat here and listened to the word sacred, and I had a problem with that. Sacred the word comes from God, and whatever is sacred is godly. And I do not feel that killing a human being is sacred. God created life, and that is sacred. I support this bill.
Is there further debate? Gentleman from 10.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just briefly. One, the case before the Supreme Court's already gone to oral argument, and if we did want to intervene, we would have needed to file an amicus brief a year ago. So this will have no effect whatsoever on any pending court case at all. And as far as the arguments put forward by the good gentleman from 34, they're very similar to the arguments that were bantered around the southern states prior to the Civil War, and it was determined that those legal theories were weak enough that those southern states opted for the plan of sending their sons to die rather than to rely on those legal theories. So I share many of the same concerns that the good gentleman from 30 shared as well. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Hearing none, will the lady close the debate?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really do not appreciate the comment of the words of sedition. Sedition is to conduct or speech inciting people to rebel against authority or a state of monarch. That is not what this resolution does. It's basically saying the Supreme Court is not God. It says we will no longer patiently endure, but we will examine and pursue its constitutional authority. It means we will look into it. I am an intervener in this case, and I'm asking you to join me today and do anything we can possible to try to do any influence on the decision that will be made that affects every one of our lives, because we will be held accountable someday for the lives we've let be murdered in this state. So I'm asking you to join me. Thank you.
Thank you. Debate is closed. The question before us is, shall House Resolution number 19 pass? Without objection, there will be a voice vote. Three must rise. There will be a roll call vote. The clerk will unlock the machine and the members will record their votes. Has every member voted? Representative, I think that's it, isn't it? Are there members who wish to change their vote? Clerk will lock the machine, record the vote. Vote count shows 40 in favor with 25 against and 5 absent. House Resolution number 19 has passed the House.